The Reformed Gamers is brought to you 100% independent and ad-free thanks to our dear patrons over on patreon.com/reformedgamers to get yourself sweet, sweet perks such as uncut early access to the episodes, special episodes of the podcast, and more. Head on over to patreon.com/reformedgamers and consider lending support and joining the herd. Without further ado, let's hop into the show. Next Gen, the final frontier. These are the ramblings of Adam and Micah. Their mission this episode, to explore tech specs and hot takes, to seek out rumors and developer leaks, to boldly go where Logan hasn't before.
Welcome, dear listeners, to episode 166 of the Reformed Gamers. I am your host, Adam.
And I'm his co-host, Micah.
Micah, welcome to the Reformed Gamers.
Thank you.
You don't really need any introduction. You've been on the show multiple times. You're one of those guys who, there's seasons where we have you on, I feel like, in bunches. There's been like different seasons where you're on like 2 or 3 times almost in a row. It's been a little while since we've had you on the show, but Micah's been a friend of the show for a long time. Platinum, savant like Logan, always hunting down the different platinums. Just real quick, what's the current platinum that you're hunting? Do you have one that you're working on?
Oh, it would have to be. I mean, we're getting slightly ahead of ourselves of what you've been playing, but Final Fantasy VII Remake, of course, I'm in the thick of that.
Okay. Well, I didn't know if you were like. I know you've got games you're playing, but there's always something you're maybe grinding on.
That would
doing
be
some
the main game. I will be playing that until I get the platinum.
Nice. As you guys know, if you listen to us at all, platinums are not my forte. I let Logan and Micah take the lead on that. Speaking of Logan, he is out this week. He's probably going to be out for potentially the next couple episodes. Logan, as many of us in ministry and life in general right now, are just kind of figuring out the new normal, trying to figure out what the different roles at his church look like. And so he's been doing a lot of extra work, really been helping out, filling in a lot of ways. So he just needed to step back for a few episodes. And as he allowed me to do for many seasons of life, especially here recently with the baby, I said, dude, we got your back. So Logan's going to be resting, kind of focusing on ministry and family and life. And so I'll be having a couple guests on the next couple episodes. And so happy to have Micah with us today. But before we get too far into the episode, a few things of housekeeping. Make sure you guys check out the reformedgamers.com. We've got a couple new articles up over there that you can check out. We've got a retrospective article on Metroid 2, The Return of Samus. That one is written by Logan. Micah recently, on April 9th, wrote us a retrospective on the PlayStation 1 version of Final Fantasy VII. So it'll be fun. We'll get into that new remake here soon enough because him being one who's played the original, I haven't ever played it before. It'll be interesting, just kind of some conversation there. So make sure you go check out his article on the reformedgamers.com. If you haven't joined our Discord yet, go over and find us on Discord at the Reformed Gamers. You can follow us on Twitch. Logan's been killing it, been playing some Animal Crossing, and he recently got his platinum that he was streaming over on Twitch for Resident Evil 3. Yes. So check us out on Twitch at the Reformed Gamers. Join us on Patreon if you'd like to support the show at any level. Go ahead and check that out. We'd love to have your support if you're able to do that. And if at a minimum, if you can't do anything else and you're willing to help us out, you can rate and review us over on iTunes or whatever podcast catcher you use. We'd love to have your positive review there. So without further ado, let's get into the show with talking a little bit about what we've been playing and what we've been reading. So Micah, why don't you open us up with what you've been playing?
Yeah, I've got a trio of games that I've been playing recently, and they're all fantastic. I'm happy to report. And they're all 3 pretty neat that they even exist. The first one I'll start with. I'll start with the game I played the furthest time ago, Twin Breaker, which this game is a $10 indie game produced by Colin Moriarty, who many listeners will recognize as the host of Sacred Symbols podcast, the PlayStation podcast that he and Chris Raygun do. He was part of Kind of Funny, ex-IGN writer, used to co-host Podcast Beyond, and just a big PlayStation fan. He is finally, with the help of crud, the developer's escaping me right now. With the help of the developer, he's gotten a Brick Breaker, old school style Brick Breaker game produced.
Old school.
So yeah, Logan actually got his hands on a review code for this from Colin's Last Stand, and yeah, was able to get a review out before the game release. Gave it a good glowing review, so go check that out on the website. But yeah, this is just a fun throwback to like Arkanoid or Alleyway for Game Boy, if you remember these games. Just a classic Brick Breaker, and it introduces a new little twist on it, where you basically have two paddles that you need to be dealing with at one time, and even up to four at certain levels in the game. You're dealing with kind of the left and right, and the bottom and the top, or whatever. But
it's crazy.
It's a lot of fun, just sort of classic arcade adventure there. It's got a little bit of a storyline there too, if you want to consume that. So that's a fun game.
Yeah, I remember playing those Brick Breakers when I was a kid. My favorite, I don't remember which one in particular, if it was a specific one, but there was one where you could like get like power ups, and then you could like shoot bullets and stuff out of the different power ups that you would get during the Brick Breaker. So it's definitely one that's on my radar. I'm going to pick it up at some point. I haven't got to it yet with some of the other games that I've been playing, but it's definitely one that I'd like to support Colin and kind of what he's doing, but it's definitely one I want to check out at some point.
Yeah, definitely a fun game. The next game I've been playing, of course, I was on the Reform Gamers episode when we talked about Resident Evil 2. I'm a big Resident Evil fan, so I've been playing Resident Evil 3 Remake, and it's a shame that this game and Final Fantasy VII Remake came out so close in proximity, just a week apart. Because I would be playing that game a lot more. It is. I was able to speed through one campaign run, which this is a short game, which is kind of getting panned over a little bit, getting some bad reviews or whatever. People are kind of maybe a little upset because you can beat the game on a first run in about like 5 to 8 hours, basically. So it's.
I've heard even less than that in some cases.
Well, yeah, I think my playthrough, though, I look around everywhere. I think it was at 7 hours, I want to say.
Okay.
But I think Logan beat it in 5 or less, perhaps, on his first playthrough. So yeah, just it depends on your play style. But regardless of the length, it's fantastic. It very much mimics the original Resident Evil 3 for PlayStation 1 in that it's a little bit less horror and a little bit more reliant on action. But it that's kind of how the original was, and it keeps that, for better or for worse. That may be a good thing to some people or not, depending on what you like. But the revamped characterizations of Jill Valentine and Carlos, one of the supporting characters, are awesome. There's some, I won't spoil it, but there's some neat tie-ins with Resident Evil 2 and specifically Resident Evil 2 Remake, which are great for fans of the series. And it has, in my opinion, one of the best endings in recent memory in video games, especially if you're an action games fan.
Is it a new ending, or is it the one from the original? It just is so epic.
I have a foggy memory of Resident Evil 3. I can remember Resident Evil 2 like the back of my hand, but 3 I only played once, I think, back in the day. So I don't have a great memory if it's like beat for beat the same thing. But what I just liked about it was just kind of epic, and you're fighting this boss, and it's just kind of awesome in a lot of ways. It's sort of, if you've, I don't know if you've played it, Adam, but if fans have played Onimusha 1 for the PS2, and it recently got remastered for PS4 and Xbox and stuff, that had an awesome ending, I thought, too. And this is kind of similar to that ending if you've played that. I know that's kind of a random pull, but anyway.
I have not, but I'll take your word for it.
But anyway, it's great little game. It's meant to be played several times. So after the next game I'm going to talk about, Final Fantasy Remake, I'm going to be going back to Resident Evil 3. And then lastly, like I said, Final Fantasy VII Remake. This game is a dream come true for me. I know guys like Jesse in the group are losing their minds. I think it's not just me and him, it's several people. I want to speak really briefly about Final Fantasy VII just in general. I think, because I've been trying to quantify this and sort of see like why this has such a resonance. I think it's in a class of games that is really, really small as far as having this sort of impact and kind of the launch that it had, where it's like it's just the buzz, like the buzz. I'm talking about, like, I don't know, what's a good example? Like a new Diablo game, or like a new goodness gracious, not even all Zelda games, like Ocarina of Time, like the Portal, these types of games, like really, really special games. I think
Mario 64.
Yeah, it's in that, like 10 or less games like in existence that kind of have this sort of devotion where the fans are just sort of rabid about it.
Some might even say Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. I don't know. There's a few. Exactly. But even some might even say that game. I don't know who, but somebody might.
So for me, a fan of the original, it's incredible. There's a lot of let's see. There's been so many teases since for this remake, like throughout time, like going back to like the PS3 when they had this like demo of the Midgar section, like everyone thought it was being remade, and now it's finally happening. And like from the visuals to the way the world has been realized in real time 3D, the way the characters have been realized, the voice actors, has all been wonderfully brought to life, in my opinion. It's really true to the source material while also adding extra storylines and story beats and just kind of areas to explore. The music, which like the original Final Fantasy VII soundtrack, is a 10 out of 10 soundtrack in my opinion, and they somehow make it even better. I'm perpetually just floored by the music that's coming through my headphones as I'm wandering around Midgar. And then the way that they have sort of remade the game in terms of combat, the materia system, how weapons work, how you can just flip between characters in combat. It's all really fresh feeling. It is, some people have compared it to Kingdom Hearts or Final Fantasy 15. I do not think it's like those. It is, I think I pressed square the entire time and beat Kingdom Hearts 3. And 15 is a little bit different of an animal. This is a lot more strategy involved. You got to think about your materia builds a lot for each boss potentially. The boss battles are epic. I know you've been playing it some. I've been rambling.
Especially the real epic when you don't take the big help that they give you. Again, we talked about in the pre-show, but I missed something that would have been real helpful for one of the major boss battles. But it is what it is. It is what it is. I got through it. So
as someone who hasn't played the original, what are your thoughts of it?
Yeah. See, it's really interesting for me because I have noticed the only nostalgia I have for it is just kind of what you were saying earlier. I know that it's big in the gaming world. Mm-hmm. So I've seen the pictures of it. I don't even know much of the story beat, really. I know that there's a big thing that happens in the middle or something like that. So that is what it is. But
just a quick yes or no. Do you know what that story beat is? You don't have to say
I
what
think
it is.
so.
Okay. All right.
I think so.
All right.
And so I don't really know a bunch of it. So I don't know, coming in cold, I don't know what's new and what's not. So it'll be interesting by the time when I beat it, and I can kind of look back and be like, oh, they added this, they added that wasn't in the original. But I still do have like moments of kind of just some nostalgia coming in. Like, I think the way that they built Cloud's character, in the original game, he's kind of got that like triangle, upside down triangle look. Big shoulders, kind of gets narrow, and then kind of with his pants, he kind of gets wide again. And the way that they kind of build his character, like it'll be like a bright background, and he's kind of got like this black silhouette, and you'll see a little bit of that build still in his character now. So I like those little bitty like things where it's like, okay, I know they remastered everything, but it's still got that feel of the original game, which I think is really neat. Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with the gameplay comments you made. Like, it's not Kingdom Hearts. I think it is. There is more strategy there. I played only a few minutes of Final Fantasy 15, so I can't really speak to that. But there is, I've only died a couple times. That's because I almost went in being like, okay, I don't want to use my healing, my potions or anything, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be a bench or something somewhere new. So I'll get in a fight and I'll die because I wasn't willing to like bolster up myself before I went into fight because I'm like, I've got to be close. Mm-hmm. So I've died a couple times like that, but when I was ready and I was focused, I haven't really had any moments where I really died. But that doesn't mean that it's not challenging. You still have to kind of focus. You got to know what you're doing with each character and in what situation. So I've actually found here recently that I've been rocking Tifa as my team leader. Like I'll go in and kind of get her built up because she's kind of my healer in a lot of ways. So I'll run around. I'll kind of build up her, what is it? The active time battle.
Yeah.
So I'll build her up and then I'll switch over and kind of build up everybody else's. So I've always kind of got her curing spell in the background, and then I'll be kind of switching back and forth. I don't rock a ton. Like I don't use Barret a lot solo unless like I need to do some like distance stuff. And really for a lot of my distance attacks, I'll use spells and whatnot. So I don't, I don't feel like I don't have a right way to play it or a wrong way to play it. I'm just kind of playing it. Mm-hmm. Like there's probably purists out there who are like, well, again, this one plays differently than the original. So everyone's kind of figuring out their new way of playing it because it's not just straight turn-based. But I feel like I still need to figure out blocking more. I don't feel like I block enough, so I take probably a lot more damage than I probably have to. But I'm really enjoying it. I mean, I think it looks great. The story is not too crazy yet. I hear it might maybe get there later on in the story, but it's still relatively grounded. My wife, I've actually had her watch. She's watched a majority of the game with me when I've been playing it. She kind of laughs at it. She's like, "Oh, of course his name is Cloud Strife. Like, what an anime name!" Like, she kind of dogs. She is an anime hater, but it's not as anime as Kingdom Hearts. It's not as anime as Ni no Kuni. So she hasn't dogged it quite as bad as some of those other games. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, she kind of gives Tifa a hard time. She's like, really? There's a meme going around where it's like Cloud's got his sword, Barret's got his gun, and then Tifa's like there with her fist, like fighting all these bad guys. So she kind of calls out some of that wackiness. But she's watched the majority of it with me, so that's been fun. But I'm definitely excited to see where it goes. Like this stay-at-home order, whatever it is for yours in New York, we call it a pause. It has allowed me to do some different things gaming that I probably wouldn't have done. Like I got pretty, I know that's kind of last. I'll get into some of what I've been playing. Like I'm probably 25-ish hours in Animal Crossing. Okay. And so I really enjoyed the first 25 hours that I've played, but I've kind of got to a point where I'm like, do I want to keep playing it? I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. I'm not the creative guy. I'm not a guy who's going to be like, oh, let me personalize my character. I don't care about the aesthetics things. Like what my character looks like, I really don't care unless it's like low hanging fruit and I can adjust it a lot. So the first like 20 hours, I feel like of Animal Crossing, there's very much like direction. So you're working with Tom Nook. I'm getting my house bigger. I'm paying for my tent. I'm doing some different things here and there. But I'm basically at a point in the game where they're like, all right, make your island better to get more guests to come. And I'm like, that's just not how I want to spend my time. Really, I like to have a little bit more of an objective. And some people might say that is an objective. So I definitely, the game is fun for what it is. But I'm just at a point where maybe I just need to step away from it for a season before I get too much further into it. But you guys know I like to buy and sell. So I'm kind of like, all right, am I going to go back to this or do I sell while the getting is good? Because I could probably get all of my money back, if not some, because I have the Best Buy Gamers Club. So I'm buying for basically $50. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I could get all my money back and break even and just say, hey, I had a fun 25 hours. So I'm kind of wrestling with that right now. But, for what it's worth, I enjoyed it probably more than I thought I would. I originally bought it thinking, okay, maybe my wife will get into this because she likes home decorating, but there's a little bit too much of the other stuff that I don't know. Well, probably my biggest beef is I hate that I have to wait around for stuff. Like, I want to be able to deck out my island, make it look sweet, but I don't feel like I have the goods to do it right now. I feel like anything that I do to my island, I'm going to end up tearing it down and doing something later when I have a better road or a better fence or something like that. So I don't know. It is what it is. I know a lot of people like Logan and them have been doing some cool stuff with it, with like a maze and hide and seek. Like that stuff's cool, but I don't know. I think I may just be kind of done with it. But we'll see by the time next time I record where I'm at with it. So I've been playing that. Do you guys have a Switch? Have you done anything with Animal Crossing?
No, I'm not an Animal Crossing fan. I frankly don't get it whatsoever. So I'll let you guys have that one.
Yeah, well, it's a new thing for me, so it isn't like it's really been my thing. I'm just, with it hit at the right time, honestly. Like, kind of going to what I was saying when I started.
It's definitely been a big hit, like with like sales and stuff. I know in Japan in particular, it was selling like hotcakes.
It came out the week that Brock was born, and so I was able to. I could play that and still engage in social conversation. So I had my in-laws in town for like a week and a half or so, and so I could play that when they were hanging out and about. I didn't feel like I had to be super focused. I could pause it at any second. It's not like online gaming where I'm like, oh, I got to finish this match while the baby's crying. I can set it down at any point and not be worried. So it really hit the right time.
Yeah.
But I still wouldn't say this is like an Adam type game. It's definitely not my normal cup of tea.
And Hannah hadn't really gotten into it either?
Yeah.
Okay.
But a game that I have got into more than I thought I would is Call of Duty Warzone, the new battle royale, the free battle royale that they've released. It's been... Have you tried it out at all?
No, I haven't. Though I'm curious to dip my toes back into Call of Duty. It's been a while.
The biggest reason I think I've got into it is I've got a handful of my buddies. I talk about them all the time. We played Call of Duty growing up. It's free. It's cross-platforming. You don't need PlayStation Plus. So for a couple of my friends who are in dad life, they don't maybe currently have PlayStation Plus. It's hard to schedule. Again, it's one of those games that hit at the perfect time. We're all home. We all got kids who are taking naps on Saturdays or Sunday afternoons. So there's been more time where we can't, like the fact that we can't go nowhere. I'm like, hey, you guys want to jump on and play some Call of Duty? I've been able to play more with my boys than I've been able to because of just the life circumstances. So it's been fun getting on there. We're trash. We're not very good. But we're having a great time playing it.
Cool.
So I've enjoyed my time with that. I've been tempted to get the battle pass, but I've held off thus far because I'm like, I don't know how much time I'm going to be putting in Final Fantasy and so on. But I've enjoyed it. It's been a good time, even though we're trash at it. But yeah, the last game I'm just going to talk about briefly. I forgot that I've been playing this. I actually started playing Black Flag, Assassin's Creed Black Flag for the first time. Oh. I'm actually playing it on my Switch. I got it for like $20 on a sale. It's a game that I wish I was playing on my PS4, if I'm being honest. Like, I'm glad I can play it on the go. I can play it while we got something else on the TV. But you can tell that it is definitely hindered by the Switch graphics and the performance. It doesn't look as clean. The combat's not as crisp. So when I initially started, I'm like this kind of stinks. I don't know if I'm going to like it.
Oh.
But I kind of got out of the tutorial, and now that I'm in it, I'm enjoying it like a lot more than I thought I was initially going to because of some of its the hindrances that the Switch have. Yeah, so I've got to the point where, like I said, I'm really enjoying playing it. Looking forward to getting into it more. But yeah, I've been playing.
It's a shame because Black Flag is an early. It may have been a launch game even for PS4 and Xbox One. And the Switch they've had some pretty serviceable ports of like The Witcher and Doom recently. That those seem like very taxing.
Well,
games.
I think that's how you could describe it. It's serviceable. I wouldn't say it's a great port. I wouldn't say it's a bad port. Like I said, and some of it's the initial when you first jump into the game. They've got you on this island that's like got trees and all this stuff. So it would need to be super detailed, but because it's not, and I was actually playing on my TV, I think it's better playing it on my handheld because it's not as stretched out.
Yeah.
So I really think I enjoy it playing more handheld than I do on the big screen.
That makes sense.
But yeah, so I don't want to get into that too much. We're already kind of eating into our show, but let's get into a little bit of what we've been reading. Micah, why don't you share with us a little bit of what you've been reading?
Yeah, with the quarantine, it's been. I'm actually just teeing up a big long excuse that I haven't been reading a whole lot, Adam. But with the quarantine, it's been kind of interesting because it's the cadence of life is thrown off for a lot of people. And, I've got 3 kids. So I haven't had a whole ton of time for reading. Like after I'm done with the day, I'm kind of just like ready just like for me and my wife to hang out, or like, Final Fantasy 7 and Resident Evil 3 just came out. So I've been digging into those. But I did start a month or so ago. I started reading Counterculture by David Platt. Have you ever read this before or read anything by Platt?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I have. Oh, I love Platt's. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah. He's quickly becoming one of mine. I've only read Radical as far as his books, but I love his sermons and stuff. And
oh my goodness, yeah.
So my mom actually got me this for a birthday present a couple of years ago. So I finally cracked it open. Just a handful of chapters in. Like I said, I haven't had a whole lot of time to get into it, but it's really good. Platt really, his whole thing is kind of, imploring Christians to sort of live out the rich young ruler, story in the Gospels, as far as like, sell your possessions and come follow me. And that is peppered throughout throughout a lot of what Platt says, and especially in this book too. But he's applying the gospel to a number of just different hot cultural topics like poverty and abortion and sexual morality and things like that. And it's, I don't have a whole lot to say on it right now. It's really good. It's Platt, and it's always good to get that sort of the lens with which he looks through is pretty, what a lot of even Christians would call extreme. But I think it's a good sort of smelling salts to wake you up a little bit.
Yeah.
And, get you thinking. There was a great C.S. Lewis quote in it about, basically it summed up saying like, listen, if your charitable givings and stuff isn't enough to where like you aren't sort of put out a little bit by other things you want to do in life, you might not be giving enough, So he really, Platt really kind of encapsulates that same mantra, I guess. And so, like I said, early in, but it's a real good book, and I know you've read it, and I'm sure you'd recommend it as well. But
yeah, Platt, no doubt, he challenges. Sometimes, you talked about his other book, Radical. Some of it is very radical, but I think sometimes just because it's radical and it's hard doesn't mean it may not be true. Again, I'm not sitting here doing everything that he's told us to do, but it's hard for me. Every time I listen to a Platt sermon, I'm like, okay, I got to get back overseas. Being a man who has a heart for missions, I'm a missions pastor, or whatever you want to call it, having been living overseas, serving with the company that Platt was the president of for a couple years. Every time you hear him, he has a heart for the lost. He has a heart for sharing Christ. It's infectious.
Correct.
There's a couple sermons. He did a sermon on Revelation where he basically 99 points from the book of Revelations that basically all point to Jesus Christ. I love hearing David Platt preach. So I'm right there with you. I'm a huge Platt fan. But what I've been reading, so same to you, I haven't been reading a ton, but I've read a little bit more. Actually, I started another book just the other day, but kind of like you, it's like when you got the kids, you feel like you're always kind of on. So it's like as soon as we put Ren down, it's like me and Hannah we'll do a devotional. And I'll talk about that briefly here in a second. But once that's devotional, it's done. It's like, okay, I want to veg out on something. What are we going to watch? Or am I going to play something? Are you going to play something? Kind of what are we going to do just to kind of chill out until we feed this new baby and we can go to bed? So one of the things we've been doing is we've actually started a family devotions book. It's called 12 Foundations Family Devotions. It's by Troy Simons and then Ruth Chow Simons. She's an artist, but she's also kind of Christian blogger. She's wrote a couple books. Hannah really likes her artwork. We bought her calendars that have like scripture on them, and they're really, I guess, pretty according to her. And so they came out with this book recently, so I got it for Hannah as a gift. So we've been reading through that, and it's been solid. We're probably 2 weeks into it now. So we kind of read that. It's really short. It's like a page and a half, some questions to discuss, a verse to memorize. So it's been good for us to kind of have that for some just discussion. I'm reading through a commentary, as I usually am, on Isaiah. So that's been good. And then what I want to talk about is in our growth group, it's our version of a small group. We're doing like a virtual one. And last night we did one on, we're doing 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. So we talked about 2nd Thessalonians chapter 1 last night. And I just want to read an excerpt from the commentary that I read, the Christ-Centered Exposition. It's talking about the hopeful future for those who are faithful. So 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, Paul is really commending the church for how well they're doing a lot of things. Like he really is just constantly commending them, but he knows they've endured some trials, some persecutions, some attacks because of false teachers and things like that. But he starts talking about difficult and painful times. And so the author of this commentary says, one of the most difficult things to do when we are walking through painful times is to keep the proper perspective. A loss of perspective is almost always followed by a loss of purpose. When our mind becomes fixed on what we don't like about circumstances, we will invariably fail to consider what God may be doing in our circumstances. Paul wants the Thessalonians to view their present circumstances through the lens of God's future promises. The amazing thing about Scripture is that God unveils pre-written history. When you open your Bible, you are able to see into the future. God has the perfect perspective for everything. And then he quotes Isaiah 46:9-10. It says, "For I am God, and there is no other like me. I am God, and no one is like me. I declare the end from the beginning, and from long ago what is yet done, saying, my plan will take place, and I will do all my will." With God, the future is far from uncertain, and through his word, he graciously provided a preview of what is coming. Armed with the knowledge of his plans, the Christian can view the future with expectancy and not uncertainty. So I thought that was just, as we've been discussing this, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians as a growth group, in our current situation with this pandemic, it's been super helpful because I think that's exactly true. Yeah, I'm not happy about our circumstances. I'm not happy that, this pandemic is happening and people are dying and, services are being restricted and all of these things. But when we keep the proper perspective that God can bring great purpose out of this, it helps us. If we get so focused in on all the negative things, like the author said, it's going to be dang near impossible for us to see God's purpose because we're so fixated on the problems. But when we allow God to turn, it's been, again, really timely. Our pastor's been preaching a series on turning problems into purpose, and we've been looking at the story of Joseph. So God's really been, for our church family, really preparing us in many ways for this. But I think that our perspective is so important. It changes everything. When we have proper perspective of the gospel, of what God is doing in our lives, what God can do through problems, it can really change how we view things. And I know for our church, we are having the reach we're having right now. Now, we don't want it forever. We want to be meeting as a local body of believers. We want to be doing service projects together. We want to be doing all these things. But God is giving us great favor as a local church in our community through our online services. He's bringing great purpose out of the problem that is our current pandemic. So, yeah, there's challenges. There's hard things. People are losing their jobs. There's a lot of negative things that are going on. But if we allow God to speak into it and try to view it, and ask him, God, what do you have for us in the midst of this pandemic? He is going to show himself through because he's going to be faithful in it. And I know we're seeing that some in our church. So for any of you who are going through challenging times, I'm not here to tell you that they're not challenging. Yeah, there's a lot of sucky things that are going on. But if we allow the Lord to speak into it, to speak into our lives, if we're clinging onto the promises of God, there's no doubt that God is going to turn our problems into purpose and use this time if we will allow him in our lives and our families and our churches. So hopefully that can be some encouragement to y'all who are listening, that God has a purpose in this. And we may not see that purpose in our lifetime, really. I mean, by God's grace, hopefully we will. But if we don't, that doesn't change that God is working these things out for his purpose and that we can trust him. So hopefully that will be an encouragement to some of our dear listeners as we, wade through these really likely will be a once in a lifetime kind of situation, hopefully, that we're going through.
Hopefully.
But yeah, we'll see. Well, here in a second, we're going to get into the topic of the show. But again, hopefully you guys are enjoying the show. Don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes. We'd love to have those if you haven't done that yet. But hit pause, go over, check us out on iTunes, give us that positive review, and we're going to get into the topic of the show. And so, Micah, I specifically sought you out. You are one of my PlayStation fanboy brethren.
Yeah.
I know if I'm talking all things PlayStation, I can come to you. And so, but that's also changing a little bit. I know you recently bought an Xbox One X, so you're becoming you're an X-Bone and getting into that. So we're not just going to be talking about PlayStation 5. We're going to be talking about next gen in general. We haven't really done this yet on the show, so we're going to be kind of talking about all things next gen. We don't have every answer. There's a lot of questions. There's almost as many questions as there are answers, but we're going to get into it, kind of next gen systems. Where are we? Where do we think we're going? When do we think we might actually get our hands on these? So let's kind of go ahead and get into that now. So we've got, really speaking specifically of the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. I know there are some other platforms out there, your Stadias, and some different things, some different consoles that might try to come out with something. But we're really talking about the two powerhouses because we'll even get into a wild card later that Nintendo might be. So talking specifically about the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. Let's start off. We'll kind of just run through some different things, system specs, controllers, kind of where we're at. So let's jump into system specs. Micah, so we've got between the Xbox, and it's not really pick one or the other, but looking at the two systems, Xbox One, Series X, and the PlayStation 5, where are we kind of at in regards to straight up system performance specs? What are some of your opinions that you have in regards to the system specs?
Yeah, well, when you look at I guess if you kind of look at the table, that kind of comparing the two systems, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, and look at kind of everything on paper, it looks like the Xbox Series X is a slightly more beefy machine. Everyone's talking about teraflops and teraflops, and
flops on flops on flops. They got more flops than Logan Sharp. You know what I'm saying? I don't even know if that's true. That's a bold statement I just made. We know Logan loves his flippy flops.
But if you want to get boil it down, I think the Xbox Series X is coming in at I think 12.8, while the PS5 coming in at 10.2 teraflops or something like that. But I think through Mark Cerny's presentation that he have kind of detailing the specs of the PS5, he talked a lot about the solid state drive that's going to be in it, which the Xbox Series X is also going to have, and how it ties in with all the other components of the, like, I'm really ignorant with speaking with some of this, but how it ties in with the CPU and the GPU and everything else. So like he mentioned these various like 6 or 7 sort of other hurdles or gates, that could clog up kind of, the transfer of data and information, and how they've streamlined that with the PS5. And so, yeah, it's yet to be seen. This is all good on paper to kind of like talk about and prognosticate about, before systems are coming out. But really, as we all know with any of these things, there's always one system that is maybe slightly more powerful than the other. But at the end of the day, they're going to be around the same thing. And it's going to boil down to the games, obviously. So what's if you want to hit the highlights for both systems, they're both going to be incredibly fast. These solid state drives that are going to be in them are going to load these games up incredibly fast. We're going to be saying bye to the loading screen like help tip thing. We're not going to have those anymore.
Praise hands, man, I tell you.
So that's something that both systems are touting. So speed seems to be a true kind of point that both Sony and Microsoft are hitting on.
And I think they both to some degree talked about like being able to have multiple games kind of in a pause state where you can kind of jump right back in without having to do Like I know with PlayStation, like Nintendo kind of has this, like you can pause it, load it back up, and you're ready to go within seconds. Seems like, if my understanding is right, I don't remember if it's both of them or one or the other, but you're going to be able to potentially do that with multiple games, if my understanding is right.
Yeah, I think that's something that the Xbox has touted so far. As far as when it comes down to actual features of what this hardware is going to be doing, we know virtually nothing for PlayStation 5, and we know a little bit more for Series X right now. Yeah,
I think there's no doubt that the Microsoft machine is going to be a beast. It's got, I mean, again, I've heard more about flops in the last year and a half than, I have in a long time. But there's a reason for that. I mean, they have a beefy, meaty, powerful machine. I mean, there's a lot of people in some of the comments we'll read later that are talking about, the new Microsoft console is basically a PC. I mean, they're trying to put out so much performance that it's really going to be doing a lot of great things. And like I like what you said kind of about the Mark Cerny presentation was like the nerdiest thing I've ever watched in my life.
Definitely.
It was so painful in many ways, but I felt like I kind of learned a lot. It wasn't what anybody was really hoping, I think. It was
good for
we
what
should
it
have
was,
expected, because they told us what it was going to be, but we were ignorant and we wanted something else, so we were still hoping for something that it was never meant to be.
It should not have
but
been
it was
Sony's
really
first foot
interesting.
forward with that. But
my goodness, yeah. It was like they kind of dropped the ball there, but the point still remains that the way that they talked about I think they call it variable frequency approach, where, like you said, the way they're trying to take away barriers. I saw multiple articles talking about, guys, we don't really get how big of a game changer what Sony is trying to do will make. Yes, they may not have the overall teraflops or some of these other performance, but what they're able to do will actually allow them to get more out of, again, I'm not a tech guy, but it will allow them to get more out of their GPU and their CPU and all these other things because of some of these barriers that they're going to be removing, so developers can really get the most out of what is there. So I'm not trying to be super Sony fanboy, but I think if you watch Cerny's conference, you really say, okay, yes, there is a level of where the PlayStation may not have the equal amount of power in regards to flops, whatever that means, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be necessarily lagging behind because of some of the other things that they did within the system. So it'll definitely be interesting to see where all this plays out, because we're going to get into it later. These system specs are going to have something to do in regards to the pricing. And so is there a cost to having all those flops, or having less? Does that give Sony some potential wiggle room, having made other adaptations? We'll see. But yeah, they're both going to be, silky smooth. They're going to run well. I love the fact, we're playing Final Fantasy VII, and we're at the end of a generation, and there's still multiple constant load screens telling me about Midgar or where I'm at or something like that. The fact that we're going to be able to get rid of some of that, like, that's super exciting. You think of like God of War, it's one cut. You don't have all these different load screens. You're just playing it. It'll be awesome when every game kind of has that feel to it. So it's going to be interesting to see how they all play out as we get more and more information and get our hands on it, really. But speaking of our hands, the thing that we have in our hands the whole time we're playing, the controller. So recently we got some new information on the PlayStation DualSense, kind of this next iteration of the controller. And we've had some information about the Series X controller, some of the different adjustments they've been making, maybe not as quite as big of a leap as the DualSense is for the PlayStation. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're thinking in regards to the controllers?
Yeah, well, I guess we got to start with the PlayStation 5 DualSense controller. It was just revealed, I think, last week as of recording. And this thing is probably not what you expected. Microsoft came out and showed the next generation Xbox controller, and it was pretty much more of the same. I don't know of too many crazy...
Kind of business as usual with maybe some little adjustments. Well, and before, I don't want to jump in too much, but the thing I think we have to remember in this conversation is they've got their Elite controller. And so while that's not the one that comes in the box, they've got some of those other peripherals that they say, hey, if you really want this, the best of the best, we've got a really good controller we give you in just the normal Xbox controller. It's still a great controller. But if you really want that next step, we've got our Elite Series controller that you can go to. So we kind of got to keep that in mind when it comes to controller. But yeah, when it comes to maybe business as usual for Microsoft, and maybe, okay, this is a little bit of a game. I don't want to act like it's changing the game, but it's a new direction more or less for the DualSense.
Yeah. So when I first saw the images of the controller, well, at first I didn't even think it was a PS5 controller. I just sort of glazed over it. I'm like, wait a second, people keep talking about this. What's going on? And I take a good look at it. I'm just sort of soaking it in. I'm like, this wasn't what I expected, just as far as aesthetics. At first it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but the more I look at it, the more I'm liking it. And now, a week or so later, I'm actually really, really liking it. I've seen, so it's got, if you haven't seen it, which, just Google PS5 DualSense, you can get a picture of it, but it's got a primarily white aesthetic with the thumbstick area and the kind of lower middle area all black, with the kind of glowing blue light bars going up the sides now instead of being in the front of the controller. And it's got a very space age, futuristic looking vibe to it.
I think Astrobot, if you've ever played Astrobot on
absolutely,
PlayStation VR.
100%. I was just about to say, if you've ever seen the movie WALL-E, the Pixar movie, Eva, the character Eva, it looks like her slightly in some sort of weird way. But yeah, Astrobot is nailing on the head as well. And you've also probably seen a ton of different color mock-ups that this thing has produced. It is the design is lent itself to have tons of awesome color combinations, basically. And what I've already seen out there, just people mock up on their own, has been incredible.
Oh my goodness!
So I know Sony is going to milk that cow and offer up a ton.
You hope so.
Well, maybe
I can't believe we're not at the point where we can't personalize everything. Like, we are living in
in the Xbox controller, you can pay a little fee to kind of get it personalized.
I should be able to go on to PlayStation.com or Xbox, Microsoft.com, say, here's a controller. I should be able to upload any image I want. I mean, people, we were in 2020. Figure this out. Like, that would be charge. If you charge people up the wazoo, they'll still do it. I wouldn't do it because I said earlier, I don't really necessarily care about all these things, but people would go nuts with that, and you would make hand over fist. I mean, there's probably a lot of, again, I'm the guy that says you just put the game in the remaster machine and it's like, it's all done. I'm sure there are a ton of challenges to what I'm saying, but again, we're in 2020. Figure it out, people. All those mock-ups were unbelievable. They were so cool.
Well, as far as things that are sort of different than the DualShock 4, the face buttons are no longer colored. They're all just gray. The X, circle, triangle, square. They're all just one color. It's a little bit beefier. It's like a blend of the DualShock 4 and the current Xbox One controller slightly, to where it looks like it might be better for those with larger hands, maybe. Or if you're just a fan of the Xbox ergonomics, it appears like it might, lean more towards that way than the DualShock 4. But otherwise, everything else is the same. The share button has been replaced with the create button, I think it's called. Yeah, with the create button. But yeah, pretty standard stuff. It's still got the touchpad coming back, which I think if it's going to be backwards compatible, it kind of had to. So that makes sense. But it's a pretty... I guess when I think of this controller versus the Xbox One controller, I guess I'm more excited to get this one in my hands to see how it feels. And it's just kind of it's a little bit more exciting compared to the more safe approach that Xbox has taken with it.
Yeah. And I mean, again, Xbox, they do a lot of things. We have to remember with accessibility. I mean, they want to get their controller in as many people's hands as they can. And even those who have different challenges so some of that comes with, again, thinking about some of the different personalizations you can do, some of the different controllers that they even have for those who need the accessibility features. Microsoft really does a great job with working with people who have different needs for accessibility. But my biggest beef with the Xbox controller is, how are you still requiring people to have AA batteries? Like, it just blows my mind. When I saw that, as I was doing, like, reading up on different stuff, I'm like, the fact that you don't have out-the-box controller with rechargeable battery, the fact that there's battery packs, like, I saw someone say, are we going to have to buy plug-and-play kits or whatever for the Xbox controllers again? Like, why is this happening? Like, you shouldn't be forcing your people. That can't be that big of a price addition. I mean, you can get batteries the size of dimes nowadays that could work for hours. Like, how is it still a thing that you're making your people buy controllers? Now, I'm sure you can buy this or that to kind of fix that issue, but it's silly that you're putting your people in that position.
I agree. I think there are a lot of people that would say, I would prefer the AA batteries versus the battery life of the PS4 controller, which is pretty sorry. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you would think that would, come with some sort of charging cable out the box or whatever. But
that's a good point. You make a good point of where, if you're doing long gaming sessions and you only have one controller, you might have to plug in at some point and get a longer cable. But for someone like me who's only getting, if I get an hour to hour and a half, I'm like, awesome. So I plug it in when I'm done, or if I have actually two controllers, so one's always charging and the other one I'm playing with. So again, you're right. There's definitely some disadvantages to having to charge that way, where you can't just pop in new batteries. But in my opinion, it's just like, that's still a continued miss. I just don't. I personally don't get it, and I hate that about the Xbox controller.
So today, controllers, I think, let me think about this. I think they retail for, was it $60 for a brand new DualShock controller, or a brand new?
You can find both Xbox and PlayStation. If you take the time to look, you can get one for $40. You can get one pretty regularly for $40, but yeah, I think $60 is the going price.
What do you think the price of the DualSense controller is going to be? Is it going to go up in price?
I don't think so.
It's got all
I think that'd be a miss.
And the rumble, R2L2.
I think it would be a miss if they try to jump that price up again.
Well, like, how much is a Switch controller, a Switch Pro controller? What are those, like 80? Are they $79.99?
No, you can get a Pro controller for $60. Your Joy-Cons will run you $80 or $70.
See, if Joy-Cons are $70, I can't imagine this is going to be cheaper than a Joy-Con, It's going to be at least $70.
I don't know.
For one of these things. It's
going
to be pricey.
I think Joy-Cons, again, are overpriced in my personal opinion.
That is absolutely true. But
it is what it is. But yeah, we'll see again as we get more information. But I think the DualSense was kind of out of left field for a lot of people. We didn't see that happening. So it's definitely a new kind of curveball in the next gen conversation. But let's get into really why we play games, why we have Xboxes, why we have PlayStations. It's not just to be like, oh, look how cool our controller is or how powerful our system is. It's as Sony people like say, it's about the games.
Oh,
it's about the games. I want how we play games. So I think there's really an interesting conversation here. I mean, next gen is going to be different than current gen. Right now, it's easy to talk about PlayStation has the games, while Microsoft has maybe the system with the One X, with services, with Game Pass. Yeah. But next year is going to be kind of potentially a different conversation in some ways. So let's talk about backwards compatibility in regards to gaming. Sony, during the Sony conference, they kind of talked about their backwards compatibility about, okay, you're going to be able to play the top 100 PS4 games they think at launch, potentially, eventually all of them. They didn't want to come out and blatantly say that. We still don't know about PlayStation 3, and I'm like, come on. But when we're talking Xbox, they're talking, hey, you can play them all. You can play Xbox games, 360 games. You can kind of run the gambit in many ways on this new Xbox Series X system. So what does backwards compatibility really mean and look like, and maybe what influence will that have on next generation, you think?
Well, I think it's going to have a growing influence this next generation compared to previous generations, partially because of how good Microsoft has done with it this gen. It is now expected. You're expected to own your games despite, crossing generations or whatever else. For example, I got the new Xbox One X the other day. I hooked it up, and besides Game Pass, which is a great deal, I go into my library and there are all my old 360 games. Not all of them, but a good host of them, just all sitting there for me to download. I'm like, oh man, I can download Gears 2 and 3 again. I can download Fusion Frenzy or whatever, whatever else, like all this stuff, and it's just sitting there for me. I'm like, well, I've got 13 games just sitting like that I own that I can play, and we can boot up and have a good time. So it's just expected. So I think it's going to be a pretty darn big talking point on that Mark Cerny presentation in the time where he was talking about backwards compatibility. There was a graphic on screen that was showing like, all right, PS5, PS4 Pro, PS4, and then there was all this space at the bottom where there could be a PS3, a PS2, and a PS1. It's like, wait, what are you doing? It was almost comical, but this is prognostication. I'd be shocked if it's not completely backwards compatible. Not saying every game is going to work, but it will work with PS1, PS2, PS3, and PS4 games. I think the PS5 will have all of them. Now, of course, and this is the case with Microsoft as well. They have to test these games. It's sort of a game by game basis. And once it goes through some of the, processes of Q&A, I think they said, all right, it's good to go. And they add it to the list of games that are quote unquote backwards compatible. So I think they're doing similar things right now. They're doing their due diligence at Sony so that, and this may be part of why they're waiting. I think there's other reasons too, but so that they can say at the big reveal, we've got all these things. You can play all these games or whatever. I think that is one cog of why they haven't announced anything yet. But it's just expected, man. Yeah,
I agree. I would love. I've kind of been a guy that kind of gives Xbox fans sometimes a hard time with this. It's more in jest than anything of like, oh, we want backwards compatibility so we can play all of our old games on our brand new system. But there's definitely a level where I would look forward to that. If I will get an Xbox at some point. I don't know if it'll be when the new ones come out. Maybe I'll get an X. I know they're on sale now, or maybe I'll even get an S because it sounds like all the games are going to be working across all the systems again. So there's a level where I'll be able to play all the new games, even on the Xbox One S. So I'm going to pick up one at some point.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but just to Microsoft's credit, that is, I fell right into their strategy. They want people to get Game Pass. Well, I got Game Pass. Yeah. They don't care what system you own. They don't care if you're on a PC, the Xbox Series X, or the Xbox One. I got an Xbox One X, thinking, like, okay, well, I know I'm going to get a PS5, but they're saying I can play Halo Infinite with this thing. And this is the best system that they currently have. So it maybe will kind of slightly future-proof me if I'm not going to, get the Series X right away. So, I guess they kind of hooked me, a Sony pony,
You're right. I think it is, Game Pass is almost a given. If you're getting Xbox, I mean, it's tempted me. I've been on the, like right there, almost buying one on Facebook Classifieds or Let Go or something like that. Like I've been so close to buying Xboxes, but I always talk myself out of it because I'm like, I don't have the time to play the PlayStation as much as I want, or my Switch. Like I don't need to be buying another system, Adam. You don't have time.
I'm right there with you, Adam, but I've had the Xbox for a week, and the queue that I have built up in Game Pass is like already a list of like 30 awesome games. It's like, I know I'm not going to have time to play them, but if that were your only console, good grief, man! You got to
for sure. If it's your only console, like Games Pass, again, it's amazing value. Like it's probably the biggest reason for me to get an Xbox. Like at least right now, like there's some games that I could buy, but any game that I would want to buy that's exclusive, and we can talk maybe more about exclusives here in a bit. But I think of exclusives, there's not a ton of exclusives that are calling me. And Ori is one that I think of. Maybe Sunset Overdrive. There's probably a couple, if I sat here and really thought about it, that I would be like, oh, yeah, I want to get to those ones too.
Yeah.
But Games Pass is, it's a huge value. Now, PlayStation Now is trying to get there. I think it sputtered so badly out the gate that it doesn't kind of get the credit. I mean, PlayStation Now is a very worthy service, I think. I think they're adding PlayStation 4 games that you can download. They're making that streaming more streamlined, for a lack of verbiage. I mean, they've made some great improvements. I mean, you can go on there right now and play Control. There was a while where you could play, God of War. I don't remember all the ones that are on there, but they had some very big, heavy hitters on that system. So while it's definitely not a Game Pass, it is something that Sony continues to build into. So if we don't get backwards compatibility for some reason on the PlayStation 3, it'll be interesting what they do potentially with PlayStation Now. How do they continue to build into that, make it better, make it smoother, get rid of that latency, all of those things? Because right now, that's how you play your PS3 games on your PS4. You can play them through PS Now, but that's not what everybody really wants. They want to be able to download them onto their system. But I think it's definitely something worth keeping your eye on. And the other wild card that we haven't mentioned yet also is Project xCloud, but the xCloud streaming service. The fact that I'm going to be able to play my games on my tablet, on my PC, potentially on my phone. Now, I know we have remote play and stuff like that on our phones, but it seems like xCloud is going to be an even next level on top of remote play. So I think that's going to be another huge advantage for Xbox. Now we'll see again what that means. Stadia made a lot of promises and they couldn't back up any of them. It seems like Microsoft with xCloud might be able to back that up a little bit more, and I hope so. Again, I'm a Sony pony with you, but I was an Xbox fanboy with the 360, so I'm not against them. I just want them to give me reasons to want to buy an Xbox, and I did not have good enough reasons this generation to buy one, and that comes down to the game. So, Michael, let's talk about exclusives, games that we think might be coming out, games that we know are coming out. I know I'll let you take. I know you have a little game for us, but if you have any comments before we get into that, what are we thinking in regards to exclusives for this next generation?
Well, just to tee it up. I guess, really we know just a little bit more what Microsoft has to offer since they've showed a couple of games already, next gen games. So on the side of Sony, it is 100% guessing. I think we can make some pretty good educated guesses, and we'll get into that in just a second. But yeah, I've got a list of, and we can talk about other games afterwards, but I've got a list of 7 next gen games here that I want you to guess the release window. You don't have to give me a specific date. Just give me like a, fall 2021, that sort of thing. And let's see how many of these you can sort of, I don't know. Well, we won't know for like 2 or 3 years down the road.
We'll see. You can reprimand me when I'm way off on my guessing.
Okay, but we'll start with what is probably the easiest. Microsoft has said day and date with Xbox Series X, you're going to be playing Halo Infinite. With COVID-19 and everything, is Halo Infinite going to hit that release date, like day and date with Xbox Series X, or is it going to get pushed back into 2021?
If you can't launch Halo with the new system, you push the system back. Do you want to sputter out the gate? If you want to sputter out the gate for Microsoft when everyone's been dogging them by saying, what about the games? What about the games? So you're not going to launch with your heavy hitter.
You're saying
you have to push the
343 Studios comes to Microsoft and says, hey guys, we're not ready. They're going to push back the whole launch of the system?
Then you're not ready. I mean, what is Xbox going to, that is your system seller on the front end. If you don't have a big game that says this is why you buy the Xbox Series X, you don't just say, oh, you can buy it for Game Pass or you can buy it for a few of these other maybe third-party games. I think it's gonna sputter out the gate. You got to come out with that, at least the big one, saying, "Hey, here's your new Xbox Series X. Here's the Halo that we've been talking about. It's a totally new way of playing Halo. That's what's going to get people to buy your system potentially instead of buying the PS5. If you come out and you say, "Oh, Halo is going to be coming in the spring, but we've got your Xbox Series X coming." Yeah, I'll buy an Xbox Series X to sell that Xbox Series X for $300 more than what I paid for it, because y'all know I'm like that. But I don't have a reason. Give me a reason to play it. Yeah. Halo is the reason to get it on the front end. So then, if you don't have this game, there's no reason to launch it. Hold off.
So then make a pick. Is it hitting the holiday window or is it getting delayed?
This is a hard conversation with the systems in general. I think we get them. I think Microsoft
I think so
and
too.
Sony. I think we get Halo. This kind of goes into release dates. I think we get both of them this fall. Now, we may be limited in the amount that we have, but I think when it comes to system and the big game, Microsoft will figure out how to get Halo done.
Okay.
If anything, because that is the creme de la creme of,
I hear you.
Of Microsoft. You have to have that done. You may not have some of your other first-party games in time, but this one you have to have.
Can't flub Halo.
You have to have it, and it's got to be good. You can't have the Master Chief Collection. It's got to be good.
All right. Well, next one up. This is not several of these games aren't going to be officially announced games, just games that we know they're coming. So with that in mind, Horizon Zero Dawn 2. Guerrilla has been dormant for a while. Horizon Zero Dawn came out in February 2017. So that's over 3 years now.
Yeah.
When is Horizon Zero Dawn 2 coming? Is it a launch game? Is it a launch window game?
So what do we call a launch window?
I guess through like March of the next year, March 2021 maybe.
Okay. So if we're saying they come out around early November-ish to March, I would love for it to be, the question is, what is PlayStation's Halo going to be? Are we going to get an Act 3? Because, that could be. But we need, in the same way that I would say, Xbox, give us a reason to buy your system, your new one, PlayStation needs to have that too. Now, we're going to be having there's a lot of question marks. What happens with Last of Us 2 now? Because it's been kind of suspended indefinitely. Does it get pushed back all the way till the launch of this new system?
I think that it could.
What about Cyberpunk? There's a lot of question marks, but I would. The scary thing is we haven't heard anything yet. Now, you're not going to tell us probably that a game like Horizon is coming to a system.
What if they drop that at like the PS5 reveal event? What if they just drop Horizon?
Here's what I'm going to say. I think we have a better chance of getting Horizon Zero Dawn than we do God of War at launch.
Sure.
So I will say, I want to say launch window because I'm an idealist and I'm optimist at launch date. But if the systems are coming out in November, I'm going to say we'll have it before Christmas. So launch window, maybe not at launch, but before Christmas.
Okay, all right. So we will be playing that very soon. Okay, next up, this is one that we have seen a little taste of. When is Ninja Theory going to get Hellblade 2 cranked out for the Series X?
You're probably looking at just past launch window. I think Hellblade is probably a good April.
Yeah, I
release.
think that's a February, March, April 2021 game as well.
It's a good get, no doubt. I mean, I played most of Senua's Sacrifice. I didn't ever finish it because it was, again, I've talked a lot about my gaming habits. It was a little much for me in the dark, like the dark side of it, like not Star Wars dark side, but like it was just kind of dark and
the tone,
not really my cup of tea. Yeah, and the tone. But I think that's a good April, late March, mid-April game where it's like, okay, we're looking for stuff to play, but it's not summer or fall.
Yeah, I think it'll be like the next up to bat after Halo, like the next big, first-party game from Microsoft. Okay, next up, also, of course, not announced, but Sony just acquired Insomniac Games semi-recently. When are we getting Spider-Man 2?
We're not seeing Spider-Man until at least probably the summer, if not next fall. I don't think we get that. I think that's probably, in regards to the big ones, that's probably third or fourth down the row.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe even 2022, I feel like.
Yeah,
for that one.
I think if we got that by fall of 21, I would be excited about that. But I don't. Some of it comes on to what happens, again, with Marvel Universe. There's a lot that plays into that because they had to push around a lot of their stuff. So that has an impact on the video game because of it's not like attached quite like the different movies with each other, but how they are releasing movies will have an effect on when Marvel says, hey, you can release this game.
Yeah. So
we're probably looking at least fall of 2021 if, like you said, it may filter into 22.
Okay, a fun one here for a dear listener, David Benjamin. I know he's a big fan of Bungie and of Destiny 2. So Bungie owns the Destiny IP, so when are we getting Destiny 3?
I don't know. I'm so out of touch with Destiny. I played it, I beat it, and I'm like, the Destiny people,
Did you play Destiny 2?
Are diehards. I did. I beat the story, and David actually helped me. I think he actually helped me finish the game, the last mission. We played a couple times, but man, they are diehards. Like, I have a buddy from Cedarville, one of my former students. Like, I was looking online, my friends listening. Like, that dude is still grinding some Destiny. So they're going to want something new. We're probably looking at the earliest again. That's probably another August of 2021 at the earliest.
Okay, I've got two more here, and this next one is going to be kind of tough just because we really don't know a whole lot about it. I just want to talk about this a little bit because I think it's really a big one for fans of Xbox. When Phil Spencer got up on the E3 stage and announced that slew of all those developers that they acquired 2 E3s ago, one of the most exciting ones for fans was a dev called The Initiative. And has got some really heavy hitter kind of veterans of the industry, and they are rumored to be remaking, I should say, Perfect Dark, or they're working on some sort of new IP. But regardless, I think this is one of the big sort of unknowns from Microsoft's camp. I know we don't really know a whole lot about it, but do you have a stab of do you think, like, well, first off, what do you think of a Perfect Dark remake?
I mean, I played some Perfect Dark back in the day. I mean, it brought bots to GoldenEye, basically. That's what everybody was saying. Oh, I can play with bots. I mean, that's what I remember playing it on the 64. If you didn't have enough people, you're like a couple people in bots. But, I mean, sure, I'm not like a Perfect Dark fanboy. But I don't remember when it was kind of leaked, or I don't know how true it was. But there was at least a rumor going around saying that there was going to be no, other than maybe Halo, there were going to be no other first-party exclusives in the first year. So that may actually cancel out what I said about Senua's Sacrifice, or Senua 2, Hellblade 2. So if that's true, I mean, we're probably not seeing that till 2021. Probably 2022. I don't see us seeing that.
Fall 2021 or March 2022.
Probably in 2022 would be my guess on that, because that would be...
You know what they're going to do? They're going to come out and announce
your legs out from...
They're going to announce it next year for fall, like the holiday 2021, and it's going to get delayed into 2022. That's what's going to happen.
I don't know what Microsoft would be thinking if they're not able to have a couple. You don't have to necessarily have a handful, but if you're telling me that your only exclusive is Halo for the first year of your new system, you are, I'm not saying you're killing yourself, but you're severely hindering yourself. As much as they want to say, we've got the services, you have a lot of really good things, but people still play for games, and exclusives matter now more than they really ever have. You hear about exclusive deals, you hear about all these things all the time. To act like exclusives don't matter is naive. They matter. People want to be able to say, because not everybody can get multiple systems. Yeah, we may be able to be in that group that can pull a few strings, get both systems, but that's not everybody. People have to make these choices of what am I going to... And you can't even say that's where my friends play anymore, because a lot of the multiplayer games are cross-platforms. So it's not necessarily even a matter of, oh, my friends play on Xbox, so I'm going to get Xbox. Right. I can play cross-platform. They're going to be thinking, what are the difference makers? Services will be one of them, no doubt, with Game Pass. But it's what's on Game Pass? Games. It's going to come down to... They have to, I think. If not, they're going to be kicking themselves in a year and a half, 2 years into the lifespan, where we're thinking we're already 15 million units behind because we had one
I would be shocked if they didn't have more, not even just first-party exclusives, but just other exclusives in general. I think they're going to have a couple of big third-party exclusives announced this year. Whenever they do the big blowout for these things, I think they'll have something from like Capcom or some sort of Japanese exclusive game like that. I betcha.
And that may be the kicker of the thing that I'm missing. They may be saying first-party exclusives. Maybe they only have the one first-party exclusive, but maybe they do have some other third-party exclusives.
Sort of like how
that would be
Rising,
different. That would be different.
I can't remember which one it was, but the Dead Rising game that launched with the Xbox One, like that was an exclusive to them. So there's something kind of like that.
Yeah.
But okay, last one, real quick. I know one that's near and dear to your heart. I think it's coming out sooner than expected. When are we getting God of War 2?
Give me it now. I want it in my veins. Man, my heart says as soon as possible, but again, just looking at the time frame that we've kind of been talking about, say we get Horizon near launch window. We got it last time we got it in, was it March?
2018 for God of War. Was it May? I can't remember.
It was March, April, May. It was right around that window. I'm
something
trying to
like
remember
that.
exactly what it is. If they could hit that window the following year, so say 2021, May or April, like I think that's ideal. I think they want to get. I think Cory Barlog and them. I mean, they've been working on it. We may not have anything, but there's no doubt that they've been working on it. Mm-hmm. And I think that it is. I mean, Sony, you want to keep crushing it. They don't. I mean, they're not doing some things, but they know that they've got a royal flush of first-party exclusives. That whenever they may be getting beef about something, they can say, "Oh yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn's coming out at launch."
Yeah. In
May, you're getting God of War. Oh, in the fall, you're getting Spider-Man. And then I'm sure that if I sat here and thought about some of the other ones, they could be saying, "We've got this one and this one also."
Yeah, I think
in production already.
I think for the PS5 reveal event, this may be a little asking for too much, but it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility if they showed trailers for Horizon Zero Dawn 2 and God of War 2. Basically, Horizon Zero Dawn coming out really soon, and then God of War, they don't really give a date for it. It's just like, it's coming, here it is. And I think that basically, if they did that, that would shut up all this spec talk, basically.
Yeah. Well, again, think of E3, was it 2015, 2016?
16
where
maybe?
It was like the best conference ever with God of War.
Where they had the orchestra there.
Yes, trailer after trailer after trailer of baller.
Yeah.
That's when we first heard of Final Fantasy VII, I think, if I'm not wrong.
I don't know if that's that year. I think it was the year before for Final Fantasy, but I know which one you're talking about. It was like they were hitting every single game out of the park. It's like, wow.
If they could pull out something like that, now probably not quite at that level, but if they get through the spec talk, the price talk, and they're like, hey, here's a little bit longer sizzle reel of the games that we have in the first year, and they hit 4 or 5 big timers, it's like that's their mic drop. Sony's is the exclusive games.
Yeah.
Microsoft's is Halo, Game Pass, xCloud as of right now. Now they could get to the game part. I know me and Steve Gutierrez were kind of messing with each other. Always giving. He commented on how he's excited about their AAA and quadruple A. Is quadruple A games even a thing? Is that a real life term that people are using? But he said he was excited about these games, and I kind of gave the laughing reaction. There's a lot to find out. Microsoft could come out and say, "Hey, we've got bang, 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 bang," and really build up some hype.
Absolutely,
they haven't been there, but they could get there because they've been acquiring the studios.
Well, but now, sort of like what I was saying with this little game thing we just went through. Like I talked about, Halo and Hellblade, and then I talked about the initiative, as in we don't know what they're making. We know Spider-Man 2 is coming. We know God of War 2 is coming. We know Horizon 2 is, like those are all games that I know for a fact I want to play. I know I would love to play Halo. I would like to play Hellblade 2. Outside of that, I don't have anything, So even though there's technically more revealed about the games of Microsoft's, I think there's a more known about the library of what is to come for PS5.
Yeah. All right, well, that's a lot of talk on games. Let's kind of get into this last little piece in this conversation, then we'll talk about the wild card there. But let's talk about price and release date. There's a recent article that came out literally today that we're recording this, talking a little bit more about price and maybe limited availability. All things considered with coronavirus affecting all of that, what are we thinking in regards to price point and launch date for these systems? Do we think they still hit the fall? I kind of talked a little bit about it earlier.
Yeah.
But where do you kind of land with that right now?
I think that they do. For one, you just look at the evidence. Both companies have said that they have reinforced and kept reiterating that yes, we are coming out this holiday. At this point in the game, even with the pandemic, at this point in 2020, you've got to have many of these plans already formulated and sort of like ready to roll. So I think there's enough confidence there. They know what's going on in the background, and they know their supply channels and everything else. And I think even if there are supply constraints, I think that's not enough for either of these companies to delay anything. I think they'll, in the case of this Bloomberg article that came out about PS5 today, I think they'll take a couple million hits. I think it would be interesting to see, if, okay, talking about price a little bit, I think both the PS5 and the Xbox Series X are going to be $500. That's what I think. So if that is true, and, let's say, the article was saying, well, there's not going to be as many PS5s as there were PS4s. It's like, well, is Sony even going to sell as many PS5s as they did PS4s with the $100 price hike? Are they even going to need that extra supply? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Time will tell, of course. But yeah, I don't think that the pandemic is going to delay these things. I think they're going to hit it. I think it's going to be probably, well, heck, I don't know. I was going to say softer launches than the previous generation for both systems, just because of the potential recession coming. I don't know where we'll be economically then. It would be hard to say that they're both going to just outsell PS4 and Xbox One sales combined, previously. I don't really see that happening, especially if they're both $500. Now, of course, there's the wild card that we don't really know much about at all with Project Lockhart for Microsoft, potentially having a secondary, potentially cheaper system. Do you think this is a reality, Adam? Is that coming out?
I mean, they've talked about it, so we haven't heard anything really about it. The question is, do you turn the Xbox? How much more powerful is Lockhart going to be from the Xbox One X?
Yeah, I don't know.
It would be. There's a level where, okay, do you make some minor upgrades to the Series X or the Xbox One X? There is no more Xbox One X. There is now this Lockhart where there's some minor upgrades with some of this new hardware to replace the Xbox One X, because I think they have an S, an Xbox One X, Lockhart, whatever that is, and a Series X. That's too many options at that point. I think I think that especially with the X and the Lockhart, there's got to be a real distinguishing reason to get the Lockhart over the X, and so I'm curious to see what that is. But they have talked about that, so. When it comes to price, I think you're more likely to get a PlayStation 5 for $500 than you are an Xbox One Series X. I could see a $500 for the PlayStation, $550, maybe $600 for the Series X. But then again, okay, what is Lockhart? Do we have a $400 Lockhart?
I had said for a while that I thought it was going to be Series X 600, PS5 500, and Lockhart 400, and I still could see that as a reality. But the more we're hearing about both systems, like I said, I think both the big ones are going to come out at 500. I think it would be kind of suicide to go above $500, as the PS3 kind of proved. I know that was about $100 more, not $550, but I just don't see either one of these guys doing the 50 price tag. It's going to be 600, 500, 400, one of those.
Yeah, that's the hard part, is I don't see anybody want to do that because it just looks bad.
Goofy. Yeah,
like there's
which is kind of weird to say. Yeah,
if you do a 500 price point on the Series X, I don't get having a $400 price point for the Lockhart and then a $300 price point for the Xbox One X. Like, I just don't. You don't want to have a different system at every $100 level, I don't think. But I know nothing about business.
And so perhaps the Lockhart is something that's coming out in holiday 2021, not for a year after the launch. It's like, okay, well, here's another new option. Who knows? Maybe this thing's coming not day and date with the Series X, but. If it is, and it will surely have a cheaper price tag if it is, I think that's a pretty interesting play by Microsoft. They saw the cheaper price tag with the PS4. I think was one of the big reasons why it did so well comparatively. And I think they would like to have that. They would like to have that cheapest, newest option kind of thing. And really, it's going to be part of their marketing to say, no matter what you choose, you're going to play the Xbox. Through all the stuff through the xCloud and all this stuff. It's all going to be connected, whether you're PC, Xbox One, Series X, Lockhart, whatever. They're going to say all these things. They're going to tout your choice. You pick the system, and you get to play the games. That's going to be their marketing. It just might work for them, we'll see.
Yeah, only time will tell, and I can almost guarantee you this, that they are going to be dang near impossible to find. I mean, you're going to have to be on Twitter with Wario64 or somebody tweeting out, hey, they're on sale on Amazon, go get them, they're gone in 5 minutes or a minute.
Oh, I
think both of these, I think it's going to be true, especially with some of the stuff that's been coming out. There's going to be lower quantities because of the coronavirus stuff. Factories kind of haven't been shut. Again, I think they're going to launch this fall, but I think they're going to be very limited in the amounts that I have, and they are going to be scalped up before
I was about to say,
Adam,
you have been known to scalp a system or two in the past, I know. So is that your plan?
I will buy one to keep, no doubt about that. The question is, am I able to potentially, and I know people probably hate this about me, and I'm sorry, dear listeners, we all have our flaws.
I'm calling you out.
I believe in
totally.
But I believe the free market and capitalism. If I can get one to sell and someone's willing to pay for it, why am I not allowed? Again, send all your hate mail to Logan and he can sift through that. I'm sorry. That's my fatal flaw. Don't stop listening to the podcast because I'm a dirty pirate.
So have you already decided which one you're going to buy? Are you already?
I'm for sure getting the PlayStation 5.
Okay.
I'm already kind of thinking through how I'm going to finagle that. I'm like, okay, these are the games I can sell and so on.
There's no way that Sony could drop the ball or Microsoft could impress you enough to where you would swap.
Sony would have to jack up the price point.
Okay.
Too high.
All right.
If it goes over $550, I'm probably out initially. I will get one, but with my Pro, it can get me by for a season. That was the thing with the PS3. I was saving up money for the PS3. I was cutting yards and all these things, and then they said like $600 or whatever dollars it was for the PlayStation 3, and I'm like,
nope.
Frick. I went and spent my money on a World Series ticket to go see the Tigers play because I'm like, I can't spend $600 on a system. I couldn't cope with that. So I didn't buy one. Eventually I got a 360 in that generation. I didn't get a PS3 till I already had a PS4. So that would be the biggest thing that would really jack it up for me is if the price point was just out of this world, which I don't anticipate that. But I would love to get both. Again, the biggest thing is just time. And I don't know. I see myself getting a X or an S before I see myself getting the Series X.
Yeah.
Because I want to play the games, but I don't have to have the newest, latest, greatest on that system. So we'll see what happens.
So then that leaves release date, basically.
Yeah, I think it's going to, we're looking at fall sometime. I don't know enough.
It's probably this coronavirus stuff. If they're sticking to the dates that they're going to say, I think both of them launched in November, PS4 and Xbox One.
We're going to have the elections on the first Tuesday of November, and then that Friday we're getting worldwide launches on both systems.
Yeah, it's going to be. I remember,
and then all hell will break loose because somehow Trump won the election again, and yada yada yada. And
I remember being in the Facebook group when the Switch launched, and it was such a fun time. And I know the moderators stuff do a great job, and it can be you give duplicate posts and stuff. But it was like I didn't care. Like everyone posting their new Switches and stuff. Those are just fun times whenever the new Xbox and the PS5 are coming out, it's going to be like awesome, man. Steven.
Well, here's the thing. I hope it's like that. It's different when we're talking. Switch is its own entity. Nintendo is doing its own thing. That's kind of the wild card in all this. Do we get a new system? Yeah. Do we get an upgrade? And by the end of this year, beginning of next year, we don't know where Switch is at with all, or Nintendo is at with all this. We're not getting a huge upgrade, but there's probably going to be some upgrade at some point because Nintendo does that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like a piece. There's a cohesion around Nintendo. People love being excited about Nintendo. Look at Animal Crossing. But as soon as we get into PlayStation versus Xbox, it's not going to be the lovey-dovey world. I love you, Mike, but it ain't going to be like that. It's going to be, oh, look how good this is selling. Look how someone's dogging the PlayStation. I would love for it to be all just positive hype, but I'm not that type of optimist. I think it's going to be, there will be a lot of hype, but I think we will have more competition. The competition side will come out than when Nintendo came out. It was like, there's nothing else competing with it. It's kind of doing its own thing. Let's just get excited because we're going to get the Wii U is dead. Long live the king. You know, that's everybody was united around that the Wii U was dead and that we could get a new system. So real quick, because we're starting to go long in time, what do you think about the Switch? Do you think we get an upgraded version within the next year?
I'm going to say no. I might be eating those words. I think it is going to happen at some point in time, but I don't think it will be happening anytime this year. What I was hoping was going to happen, Nintendo's got to have something for these launches of these two systems. And I thought for a while it was going to be Breath of the Wild 2. I thought that was going to be ready to go. And I'm kind of thinking more and more that might not come out this year. So I don't know what Nintendo's going to do this year as far as their big game. I know the rumors about the Mario remakes and stuff is cool, but I personally don't think we're going to see a Switch upgrade as far as like a kind of a beefy, more spec-driven piece of hardware. I don't think we're going to see that this year. No.
Hey man, put those remake Mario games right in my hand. Take my money. If you're going to give me a remaster Mario 64, and really what I'm really excited about, Mario Sunshine with updated controls and graphics, and then the Galaxy games. I dabbled in the Galaxy games, but I never personally owned a Wii because everybody around me had one, so I didn't feel like I had to.
Yeah.
But give me updated Mario games, and I'm in. I'm in on that pack. I'm buying it day and date, day one drop. I mean, that's a great bundle if it happens. And that, again, that's not a console, but if that comes to be, that's going to be huge. And if somehow they can do both Galaxy games. All I've heard so far is Galaxy 1. But if you can give me both Galaxy games, I will be so ecstatic.
I would be happy.
Because I never finished those.
Because, frankly, I think they could get away with releasing 64 and Sunshine and Galaxy all separately on their own for $50 or whatever. It'd probably get away with it. So
yeah, it'll be interesting.
If that was one package, that is for sure day one buy for me. I've never played.
Or just bundle 64 and Sunshine and then the Sunshines together. Sell them for $40, $50 combo.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. Anyways, that's a whole nother episode of getting hype. Let's get into some of what our community has said. I've got some different posts I'm going to be reading here. So David Matthews, he's been on the podcast a couple times. One of our patrons, he said, as a primarily PC gamer, I'm excited for how this will push PC gaming forward. The Xbox Series X is apparently the equivalent of a Ryzen 7/RTX 2080. I don't know what any of that means. But it might even have PC gamers questioning whether or not to switch to console. You could build a system that costs $1,500, or you could buy a system that costs $500 or potentially $600. So that's what he's really excited about this generation of what does it mean for PC gaming? Does it push that envelope? Colin Gregory said, I want the next-gen console to graphically blow my mind. I know that there are a lot of factors related to the graphics, like what kind of TV you have, refresh rates, etc. But all that being even, I want to start a game and feel like it's more realistic than reality. Well, that's a big wish. I don't know if something can be more realistic than reality, but it can be very close to it. Let me get into some of our Twitter responses. Again, we asked, what are your thoughts about the next Xbox and PlayStation? Samuru/Gaming with God says he's looking forward to faster loading times, cross-play with other systems, backwards compatibility. Let's see there. It says, it's the JB show says a God of War sequel. Very excited to see where that story goes. Can I get an amen? And then John Lipari says, this is a weird one, but I'm super excited about the UI for each system. I've recently played on my PS3, 360, PS4, and Xbox One, all in a 2-week period, and the way each console moves and operates, the sounds and the flow of it all. I can't wait to boot them up for the first time. There is something special to booting up that system for the first time and hearing that intro. There's been a lot of videos throughout the time that's like all the different PlayStation intros, all the different Xbox intros. There is something special to those UIs. And then let me just read a couple.
Smell, honestly, like booting up a new console for the first time and seeing that UI. Oh man, it's awesome. Yeah,
it's a great moment. Like I love when I first got my PS4 and I'm like opening up and I'm like talking through it with like my wife and all this stuff. And like, it's like, again, you feel like a kid again. It's really, it's hard to beat that moment. Again, taking out family stuff and God stuff. That for me, I mean, those are really great moments. Looking over on Facebook, Isaac Stolt says, I'm really looking forward to the sequels to the big hits on PS4, God of War, Spider-Man 2, Horizon Zero Dawn 2, assuming they make them because of their success. He says, I try not to buy games more than once, so I'm really hyped for backwards compatibility. So he's saying, really, I'm excited for these games because I'm hoping I'm going to be able to play them on my PS4. Wesley Ray says the PS5 definitely has my number because that's where the exclusives are at. However, if the new Xbox continues its total domination in the backwards compatibility market, I might just have to commit. Again, that's a lot of what we've been saying on the show. We already mentioned Stevens says he said the new AAA and quadruple A first-party games from Xbox. So I think he's semi-serious. Again, quadruple A. Maybe they got that ace in the pocket that we're not aware of.
He's dead serious, man. And, you know, I think he got some things to look forward to for sure.
Nathan Means talks about being excited about xCloud. Again, we mentioned that. I think that's a big one. And then Jeff Wofford says what new features Xbox will bring to consumers. OG, with the birth of Xbox Live 360, became an entertainment hub. Xbox One brought backwards compatibility and Game Pass. Who knows what the new Xbox will bring? He says he trusts that it's going to be awesome. So if you didn't get your response in, dear listener, let us know what you're thinking, what you're excited about for either PlayStation 5 or Xbox One or both. There's definitely a lot to be excited about, as we mentioned a lot of the things. But time will tell with what actually ends up coming out. So before we close and get into recos, we want to give our patron thank you. So thank you to all you over on Patreon who are supporting us, who allow us to do the podcast, who allows us to review games, who allows us to keep the lights on, allows Logan to take a break. We really appreciate you guys who have faithfully stuck with us, many of you, for a couple years now. So I'm going to read through these real quick. Alex Castellanos, Andrew Swann, Andrew Steedman, Ashley Kronenbitter, Caleb Schmidt, Christopher Commander, Colin Gregory, Connor Felty, David Matthews, Derek Smith, Feelin Film. He's a new guy. Thanks, Feelin, or Film. It could be a girl. Jake Walker, James Barker, Jesse Penu, Joanne Monroe, Josh Broccolo, Kokorodaki, Lava Burner, Mark Fromme, Matthew White Chocolate McDougal, Melvin Benson the Fifth, Micah Hendrick, our man over here on the mic, Michael Toller, Nate McKeever, Retro Rewind Podcast, Sam White, Sam Kalunga, he's new. Thanks for joining us, Sam, and Wesley Ray. Patrons, thank you, Micah. Thank you for your continued support. Not only coming on, but also putting your money in where your mouth is and continue to support us. We appreciate you guys for supporting us. But before we get out of here, Micah, why don't you give us a Rico or two before we sign off?
Yeah, I've just got one thing. I am a big Star Wars fan, and even a fan of the recent movies and everything. So just trying to find some more kind of canon lore to consume, and so I've gone back and I started watching the animated cartoon Star Wars Rebels from a few years ago. It's sitting out there on Disney Plus if you subscribe to that. So yeah, it's got 3 or 4 seasons out there, and we're in the middle of season 2. And it is really excellent. The cinematography and the shots that they capture, it is very you feel the budget there, and it doesn't feel like a secondary outlet for Star Wars. Really, sort of like the way Jedi Fallen Order felt like a good, true Star Wars game. This is a great, fantastic show. Not just for kids; it's good for adults as well, and great characters and storytelling. So go check out Star Wars Rebels.
Nice. I always struggle at Rebel or at Rico, so I'm just kind of thinking through what's something I've new that I've watched or seen. So I recently watched the movie 1917.
How's that?
Have you seen 1917?
I want to. It's on my queue or whatever, but yeah.
It was one of those one shot where it's basically start to finish, no cuts, no fades in and out. Really interesting. It pulls on the heartstrings, no doubt, in some different points. Some things happen that I was not ready for, but I watched it, I don't know, maybe a week or so, a couple weeks back, and really enjoyed it. So that'll be my reco for the night.
Fantastic.
All right. Again, guys, thanks for listening to the Reformed Gamers here on episode 66. Again, if you want to interact with us, check us out on Patreon. You can find us on Twitch, reformedgamers.com. Go to Twitter. You can like us on Facebook or join our Discord. We'd love to continue this conversation about next generation gaming. I mean, the Patreon or the Discord is always popping if you ever want to get in there and talk with people about it. So thank you for listening, and GG and amen.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Reformed Gamers, the podcast all about theology and gaming. TRG is edited by Dear Ear Productions, so thank them for the buttery smooth tones in your ear. If you're looking for extra content, head on over to youtube.com/The Reformed Gamers. The Reformed Gamers is entirely fan-supported over on patreon.com/The Reformed Gamers by our dear patrons. The following deer are at the producer level or higher and will forever be thanked at the end of each show, as long as their pledge comes through, or we forget to update the audio. Those people are David Matthews and Wesley Ray. Thank you for your support on patreon.com, keeping our controllers charged, and supporting Logan in his never-ending quest to collect them all. Platinum trophies, that is. So be a deer and keep it locked here. Keep listening. We'll catch you later.